I wanted to talk about healing. I feel like healing is a part of the zeitgeist right now, but I have a feeling people don't actually know what it means to heal or how to heal. So I want to talk about my healing journey that I've been on for maybe the last 10 years. I'm Brianna, and my channel has been about my entrepreneurship journey. I feel like a good amount of my healing journey has occurred or been accelerated because it has been facilitated by my entrepreneurship journey. Because when you get into entrepreneurship, there's so much information kind of adjacently available about law of attraction, affirmations, being a better you, finding your purpose. And so because of that, I got into this other kind of spirituality, and I eventually kind of stopped focusing on the law of attraction and affirmations, kind of like, I don't want to say tricking myself, but I stopped focusing on kind of tricking myself into being the person that would have $1 million, and I just got focused on doing the work to become the person that has $1 million. So it became apparent that my limiting beliefs about myself or my wounds were part of a non-winning mentality. So I set off to start to heal. And that's why I am where I am today. I think that healing has, the main theme is like identifying the things that hurt you and taking it back and doing a couple things. You have to, when you find the source, you need to allow yourself to feel the feelings that you may not have been able to feel when you were a kid or when you were in a really stressful circumstance. And then you have to feel bad for yourself. Or if you caused the problem, you have to take responsibility. And then you have to reconfigure what you think about yourself or what you think about the world or another person as a result of that you experience. So I'll talk more about that. I will talk about what I had to heal from and how I went on the journey and where I am now. I do want to start by saying that you probably heard, well, you may not have, but Charlamagne the Guy on The Breakfast Club constantly says, I'm sending healing energy. And I think a lot of people don't really know what that means. For me, when somebody says they're sending healing energy, or if I'm sending someone healing energy, I think about the heart chakra, which has a green color, and so I'm sending them like a green energy. And sometimes I'll imagine myself hugging them, or I'll imagine myself holding a small child if they need healing energy. Or I will, if it's like my uncle was in the hospital with COVID, so I imagine myself breathing into his mouth, kind of like CPR, and filling his lungs with the green healing energy. So I wanted to put that out there. If you don't watch anything else, you'll at least get that piece that you can use to send to people in addition to praying, or instead of praying if you don't pray. So my spiritual background is that I grew up in church. I began identifying as a Christian at age 6, but it's been, I think I've experienced a deeper connection with God since I've been on my entrepreneurship journey. Okay, so I said that healing is figuring out or identifying something that hurts or bothers you or something and going back to fix it. So for me, the first thing I had to do was kind of fix the hurt that I was constantly experiencing in the world. So I would break my healing journey down into 3 categories: immediate healing, old wounds, and then unconscious wounds. And since I've hit my 30s, that's when the old wounds and the unconscious wounds came into play. I'm 33 if I didn't say this. So when I graduated college, well, I'll say what kinds of things hurt me. First of all, I grew up with my mom being sick and having mental and physical health issues, as well as my dad not being really an active part of my life. And so that's kind of the backdrop for who I am. We also have financial hardship, but my mom didn't really allow us to feel the pain of that. She was always working as hard as she could, and a lot of people helped us out, but we didn't have, like, we never went on vacations, or we didn't exactly expect to get everything we wanted, type of thing. So there's that. When I was in high school or college, I experienced a lot of hurt from social situations, and my personality being such that people often mistook me, and it was really hard for me to make friends. Now I know part of the sense of loneliness that I had, because I struggled with loneliness, came from my dad not being present in my adolescence. But I was really lonely, and it was hurtful not to be able to make friends, on top of not feeling accepted in the Christian ministry that I was a part of, and not feeling loved by my immediate teammates. I was a college athlete. And once I graduated college, and it was kind of like, you want things, you're working towards something, and then at the end, nothing came to fruition. And all of the hurt that I experienced but had still had hope for kind of hit me all at once. And I also dealt with a very intense breakup with my high school college boyfriend. So after college, I had a lot of hurt. Not achieving what I wanted to achieve as an athlete was a heartbreak to me. And when I learned, after dealing with so much with my college boyfriend, we weren't together, but we were still together, he was still emotionally dependent on me, then I learned, he told me he had another girlfriend. That broke my heart too. So I was dealing with those two things kind of close together, because that was the second semester of college. And then on top of graduating out of the student ministry, and realizing or feeling like I never ever actually belonged. I had a lot of hurt. So with the church hurt, and I think church hurt is something, it's so heavy for a lot of people. And I think it's because when you are so fatally wounded by the church, that typically means that you put more faith in the people than in God. And sometimes that means that you didn't have enough faith in God. So I think that's relevant to where I am now. But I had to sort through that pain and recognize that the church, the people in the church, is different from Christianity. And it took a lot of sitting with the pain and feeling upset and saying mean things to get to the point where I had to see where I actually was and all that. And I had to understand that I was looking for people to validate me when they weren't able to validate me, especially not validate my relationship with God. So I began to heal that very slowly, and that wasn't exactly consciously. It was like I was in so much pain, I had to just get through it. But other than that, dealing with my boyfriend, at one point I just was like, I'm tired of crying. I'm done. And I didn't cry for an entire year. I got to a point where I really couldn't cry. And I felt that experience, along with, I guess, the rest of my personality, just made it hard for me to be connected to my emotions for pretty much the rest of my 20s. However, after that year, I did begin to, what I felt like was grieve. I had a lot of grief from college. And I would go home to my mom, because I moved to St. Louis after I graduated. I would go home and watch Ayanla Fix My Life and cry. And like, I would really cry with them. And I would also watch The Office, and I would cry over things that I didn't cry about before. This is also overlapping with me getting married at 26 and being isolated on the military base, because my husband was in the military, and feeling sad and, kind of hurting there too. And I would watch the show and cry. Like the part where Jim tells Pam that he's in love with her, and she says, I really appreciate your friendship. And he says, don't do that. don't do that. I want to be more than that. Oh my gosh, it broke me so much in that time span, that time period. So I think that those things help me grieve. I really do. I also, in the apartment I lived in before I got married, and then when I got married, I decorated with yellow. I was reading, I think, The Fault in Our Stars, in one of the characters comments that yellow is a color that's supposed to help with grief. And I understood why I was so attracted to yellow, because I had so much yellow in my house and I'm sitting in a yellow chair. Yellow is not my theme color, but I think at that time it was really about grieving. So then in 2015, I was working at Bankers Life and Casualty. It was really hard for me because I don't have the right personality for it, life insurance. And the manager told me to sound like a little girl. And it offended me so much. She wanted me to sound like a little girl so that people would be less on the defense when I called them on the phone. I would seem less assuming because I'm kind of formal. And it just rubbed me the wrongest way, and I broke down crying, and I realized, okay, something's wrong. But the reason it offended me so much is because after college, I had put so much energy into being okay with myself, because obviously in college, who I was not received well. So after I graduated, I spent a lot of time or energy trying to, I didn't want to keep having these experiences where I was misunderstood or not embraced. So I changed my personality to be more charming and sweet. And I found solace there, but then I also began to be okay with who I was. So for her to tell me to change just really offended me. So at that point, I went to counseling. And I think this is where the healing really started. I had some conversations, like when I was 23, I confronted my dad for the first time. I learned that you don't expect your parents to be able to apologize. I think later that year, my mom and I fell out, and I was able to tell her how I felt, and she responded, and we began to address our problems. But it was still a really long journey with me and her. But I had done little things like that. But when I went to counseling, I was like, why do I not fit in? And she helped me to understand how I fit into the world, and how every negative interaction I have isn't about me. It doesn't mean that I'm not a person worth getting to know. And she just helped me to see that sometimes people act in ways that aren't individual. It's kind of like textbook. So I stopped being so hurt, because by the time I got to her, I was at a place where I was just kind of world weary. I remember the second year I was with her, I was like, I can't keep trying to make friends. I don't have it in me. I can't keep doing it. And it's harder in the military, especially harder for me. But I was able to understand people enough that I didn't take everything so personal, and I stopped adding to the hurt that I was already carrying, and able to then go back and sort through things. So one of the experiences I had while I was seeing the therapist was that I was working at this place, and we had to do 12 weeks of training. I was the youngest, and the person who was next oldest, she was like 3 or 4 years older than me. And there was this other woman who didn't have kids, and she kind of was young acting. I think she was like 35, I was 26. Or 27, and they were talking about going out, and I was like, I would love to go out. Yeah, I want to do that. It was like me and this girl were friends, and this other girl was just kind of around, and I'm like, okay, cool, we're gonna go out. And a couple weeks later, I hear them talking about the weekend they had, and I just couldn't believe that they didn't invite me, and it hurt me so much, because I thought I was doing good. I thought, I'm not sheltered anymore, I'm outgoing, I let it be known what I wanted, and they excluded me. What my therapist helped me understand is sometimes people they just want to be around people who are like them. And I have a unique personality, I have a unique demeanor, so sometimes people don't exactly identify with me. So them not inviting me is not because they don't care about me. I mean, they might not have, but it was because they want to be inside their comfort zone and I wasn't inside it. So like they couldn't see me at a club, so they just went on their own. And so those are the types of things I had to understand about people and not take so personal. I also learned that I can say to people when I meet them, sometimes people don't know how to take me, and I have definitely used that, and it actually causes people to be curious about me, and also helps them to not take offense at my demeanor. I recently made a video about pretty privilege, and I think that's a part of why people didn't know how to take me. So that was the first part. That was like, I saw her from age 26 to 29. And then I didn't see her for the last year I was in North Carolina. And then I didn't have a therapist until just now. So I think that was like phase one, like stopping the hurt, going back. What I learned, well, I just learned how to be. I feel like I reconciled myself to the world. Then I hit them 30s, and I may have mentioned, like, people say that you know who you are in your 30s, or women anyway. So I was excited to hit my 30s because I wanted to be more self-possessed. I wanted to be sure of myself. That's what they say. And what I noticed was, you know, when you go to college, you're a freshman, you're down here. We're talking about a pyramid. By the time you become a senior, you're up here, you feel like you know everything, you feel experienced, and then you enter the workforce and you're back at the bottom of the pyramid. And I had done so much healing. I felt like I knew how to interact with others and understand others. And then I hit the bottom of another pyramid once I got to my 30s. And I realized there was so much about myself that I didn't know. And I was reading a book where it was a book about a counselor, and I heard the term Alexithymia, which is a construct where one does not feel connected to their emotions. And again, in college, well, not again, but in college, I had a friend that constantly said, you sound like you're reading off cue cards, you have no emotion, you're unemotional. And I got that from other people too. So I just kind of thought it was my personality. But then when I learned the term alexithymia, I learned that it's due to childhood trauma or a trauma. And I knew that the experience I had with my college boyfriend did that to me. And ironically, his name is Alex. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to be disconnected, because I also want to be able to have intuition so I can know what to do in business. And so I was like, okay, I have to try to heal this. I have to try to heal from him. At this point, it had been, let's see, that was 2019. And the last time I saw him was 2011. So it had been a while, and I had always felt like I needed to just get over it. And in this section, this old wound section, I have learned that time does not heal all wounds. I think in terms of how I felt about my college friends and my, the college friends and teammates, time did heal that, but partly because there wasn't actually anything lost. I just wanted to feel accepted, but it's not like I lost a relationship that meant a lot to me. But in this case, time did not heal all wounds. And so that summer, I remember like crying for the first time. I cried to my friend at Chick-fil-A. I went through so much, and I just feel like it doesn't matter because he's shut me out of his life and not really acknowledged the sacrifice I made. And I did a lot of crying, and I felt better. And I just understood that I needed to go back and grieve the things that I shut down, the things that I tried to shut out, like go back and have those emotions. So the following summer in 2020, I actually wrote him an email, and I didn't get a response. But what I learned is that in articulating, acknowledging, and asking for accountability, there is healing. And I've done this since, where I've written a letter to someone and then realized it's not even for them. Like, I don't even need them to apologize. It's just the process of doing this is taking me through the stages of the trauma. And that's all that it's about. In the letter, I remember saying that I needed him to help me heal. And now I don't need him at all. I don't feel anything about that. I used to feel a lot of resentment, a lot of spite, sadness, which was awkward because I was married to somebody else. But, you know, that was a wound that was never, it was just ignored. So old wounds are like, if you've broken your ankle and you don't treat it properly, you never say that it's broken, you're going to continue to have pain until you do something to fix it or maybe have surgery. And so you have to go back and acknowledge that something has been broken and administer the proper treatment so that you can heal as close to normal as you can. I also reached out to a friend. We had been really close friends in college, and he would say things like, I feel closer to you than any of my other sisters. He was also a Christian. And we were really close. I depended on him emotionally a lot, and he was in some way emotionally dependent on me. And since maybe 2012 or 2013, we really didn't have a relationship. And again, I wanted to be accepted so bad in college that his relationship meant a lot to me. So then when he was no longer validating me, it was really hurtful. And I couldn't get over it. I would see him online because he's kind of a big deal. And so every time I would see him, I would feel hurt. And so I reached out and I was like, I would like to talk to you. I need to, I just want to talk about the relationship, like our friendship. Did it not mean anything to you? We ended up talking on the phone. And the other thing I've learned through the process of going back, because that was one of like 4 conversations with people from the past, is that the truth is always better than whatever you made it up to be. And if you're like me, I usually am some sort of victim in whatever the story is, because I guess that's kind of how I feel about life. And so the truth is always better. I mean, it's not better, but anyway, it's more something better to work with, because we usually tell ourselves something that makes us a victim. Well, what I learned was that he had feelings for me, and I didn't realize that, probably because I was disconnected from my body and my brain. And he got married, so if he had feelings for me and he got married, he can't really take this relationship into his marriage, which I completely understood. He validated that he did, like, the bond we had was real. And I was able, it was a really good conversation. I cried, even though it seems silly to cry about something so long ago and when you have a whole husband, but it was a wound. I cried, he said he was sorry, and it's all good. It's, again, something I don't really think about anymore since I addressed it. I also had a friend from 7th grade. I reached out and I was like, why were you so mean to me? And he gave me some truth too. He said, I didn't know how to take you because you were so smart, and it made me feel a certain way about myself, and I just externalized that onto you. And I would never have guessed that, because I didn't really see myself as different from them. I just didn't. So that helped me, and it also helped me to understand possibly about other relationships I had at that time. So those were the old wounds. It was like things that hurt me on a regular basis that seemed so far ago. It was going back and telling myself, it's okay to be sad. You're not silly for being hurt by this. Your pain is valid, and go ask for accountability. I was able to get that, or at least acknowledgement, from most people. Of course, with my ex-boyfriend, I didn't get that, but I still got the healing because I had to have compassion for myself, and I had to be willing to own my pain. So I was watching a video last week, and it said that self-compassion is key to healing from trauma. So you have to be willing, you have to look at yourself and say, you know what, that is sad for me. I should be sad about that. It's okay for me to be sad. Or you have to say, I feel really bad I made that choice. I feel the shame I wasn't willing to feel. I'm responsible. Because sometimes we need to heal from the things that we do that hurt others as well. So the third level of things I was unconscious of. There's a book that I read this year that I feel like has changed my life. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. I didn't realize how big of an impact my dad's absence had on me. And the book helped me to see that there are a whole string of predictable experiences or elements of my life that came from having an absent or immature parent. And so since I've learned that, I have been trying to address where this misbelief, because my dad wasn't there, has impacted my life. And I'm just trying to feel in a lot of ways. So I noticed that I took my dad to counseling in September, thinking again that I needed him to acknowledge his wrongs and offer a solution. But what I just recognized is like there's nothing he can really give me. I have to feel sad for myself and process these emotions that I didn't process at the time that they happened, or maybe I did. But the other element of healing, the biggest part, which I should have said at the beginning, is you are going back to an experience you had in the past and applying your, however, like your mature thinking or your more wise understanding to the situation. So if somebody cut me off in the gym in 8th grade and that hurt my feelings, now I'm looking back like, well, I mean, we're in assembly and people were moving fast, so they probably just were in a hurry, you know. But we get caught up when we're younger, or when we're in a vulnerable state, and we don't think about things in a holistic way. So anyway, so right now I did 2 sessions with my dad, and then I got my own therapist, and I realized like I need to go back and figure out the ways that I've been hurt, or the things that hurt me, and unwrap them and figure out what of my personality now can be traced back to what I didn't get, and not just from my dad, from my mom or anybody, and heal that in the way it needs to be healed. And for me, in December 2021, which is this month, I had a week where I just asked for some space, and I cried a lot. I don't even know what I was crying about, but I was just crying. And I think it's like when I was in the therapy with my dad, I would get upset, but I wouldn't have any thoughts about it. And that was a signal to me that, you know, your body is carrying some trauma and stress, but your mind is not allowing it, is not acknowledging it. So I think when I gave myself that space, it started to come out. And I hope that I can still do the work with my therapist to really go back and look at what it was that hurt me and how those experiences have informed who I believe myself to be today. And say, this is not true about me. This is not who I am. Just because maybe my dad made me feel unwanted doesn't mean I am unworthy or I am unwanted. And I also have more compassion for my dad than I did in my early 20s, because I understand what his life was like, and also, you know, what his limitations are. And it's relevant to take that information and reassess experiences I've had. But one of my problems is being too compassionate and putting other people's feelings and limitations over my own pain. So that's the stage of healing that I'm at. So I talked about the stages of healing, which I believe for me to have been stopping immediate hurt, healing the old wounds, and healing unconscious wounds that I don't know about. And as you become more aware, as you become more conscious and more wise, you will then be able to take it a deeper and deeper layers to become more whole. And I just really feel like I don't know that this process ever ends. I think we're always going to be healing, because we spend so many years of our lives unconscious. And for me, I believe I kind of became conscious at probably about 24. That's when I started to realize my experience is not just the experience. Like, people are different, and I have to learn that I have to accept others, because up to then I just really was like burdened by not feeling like I could be in the world. So I know I'll be talking about this more in the future. If you're interested in that conversation, please stick around on my channel. And please give me a like if you like this conversation, and like my Facebook page as well. All right, until next time.